कृपया ध्यान दीजिए, the language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen, yaar, don't be so conservative.
I'm going to start with one of my most favorite quotes in the English language from a very young age, which is, "Oh hell." No, that's not it. This is it. If you pick up a starving dog and make him prosperous, he will not bite you. That is the principal difference between dog and man. Mark Twain, my grandfather, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, wrote this many years ago. I just love that quote because it completely explains the relationships you will have going forward, both with animals and humans. And the human cynicism is completely warranted. We'll get into that in detail with one of my favorite people who I've never met. But the moment you say you're a dog lover, we live in this world where I believe there's lots of hatred and love. Some of us who think we are left of center and more liberal in nature can't be bothered with petty, silly things like racism and casteism and communalism, but we do have our own prejudices. I hate anybody who doesn't like animals. But this lovely lady who's joining us right now is not only a testament to humanity is alive and well, and a few people may have been made by God, but she's written a lovely, well, she's put together, let's put it that way, put together a book called The Book of Dog. It is like an anthology. It actually is that of very personal accounts by many people, some of them very rich, and their relationships with dogs. Let me bring her in right now. Hemali Sodhi is right. In fact, she's in Mumbai, in our city. We'll find out why. There's a launch of a bookstore which we thought had died, and we went to the funeral a few years back because I live very close to it. But they're relaunching Crosswords, and so Himali is down because that's the business side of her as well. Himali, firstly, thank you so much for coming on this show. We've been corresponding. Firstly, you've been corresponding with me. I'm a child of the 50s. Like I like pen and paper. I write everything down, pen and paper. I mean, then I have to go through WhatsApp and computers and emails, and it's so difficult for me. But so I apologize for my tardiness at replying and everything else. But I have to tell you, very proud to be associated. And I never use the word very proud in myself very often. So very proud to be associated with the Book of Dog, which is
Thank
your
you, Cyrus.
anthology.
Thank you so
Uh,
much for asking me, and thank you for your piece. It's one of my favorite pieces in the book.
yeah, well, that's because I can spell, and some of these guys can't. But it's a fantastic collection of very interesting people from all stratas of not stratas so much, but definitely different walks of life. And let's begin with you firstly. What's your dog connection? How did you become such a great dog lover? And go back and tell us how it all started.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting actually because I wasn't born a dog lover. I was
Ah,
actually, yeah, when I was growing up, I know, when I was growing up, I was petrified of dogs. I was petrified of most things. I was a very shy child.
you're a
And
convert.
yeah, I'm a convert. So someone told me you're a late convert, which I think fits this perfectly well. But having my first dog, being fortunate to have a dog's love was a transformative experience for me. I think it was life changing, as you would understand. From a place where dogs used to terrify me to have my life circle around this very lovable person in my life was just so transformative. Um, and then I think what also happens is once you get a dog into your life, you just open up to this whole universe of dogs, right? So you make friends with dog parents, you eventually get more dogs, you do dog speak. So I think all that sort of converged in, and my background is in publishing. So when we think about stories we want to tell, books are a natural medium. So the idea for the book was there for a while, but I think it's only around. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I think, like I said, I mean, dogs have been transformative, and I think my most profound relationships in life have been with some of the dogs in my life, all the dogs in my life. So you would understand that.
Yeah, I know exactly. So I feel a little bad sometimes when we dog lovers or animal lovers meet and have a certain conversation, and it sounds bizarre to some other people, especially when you're discussing the facets of a puppy or something and how you're completely demotivated because you haven't seen your dog for 9 days and you're far away or whatever, and they just can't empathize. Or when a pet passes away, for example, I remember one of
Yeah.
my friends asked my other friends, he's not eaten for 4 days. What's wrong with him? He's just a dog. I'll never forget that line. Is just a dog because it's so
Yeah.
it really hurt. Even
Yeah.
now, it almost makes me well up because I'm saying you can't say that. You just can't
Yeah.
say that to someone who's had a relationship because you just won't understand, and you don't even want to explain it to anyone. You're like, I'll only talk to fellow dog people, and that kind of thing. I don't want to talk. I just disassociate myself with people who are disconnected. I've become vicious that way. I don't know. It's a Parsi thing. With old age, it has to go somewhere. Couldn't join a terrorist outfit, so this is where we go. Um, yeah.
But
So
yeah,
I'm
I get
only
that.
yeah.
So, go on.
Go ahead, please, Himali. I'll keep talking, and this is a
No,
subject I
no,
love,
please,
so I'll just
please,
lecture.
I love talking to dog lovers. You know that. I mean, the book is testament to that. And I think you're right. Going back to the point of grief when it comes to losing a pet, I think that is one of the most isolating experiences we go through because others just don't get it. And I don't understand why they don't get it. I mean, when you have such a profound relationship in your life, it's natural that the passing is going to be one of your most terrible moments in your life. But yeah, there you have it. There are dog lovers and there are those who don't understand and who I'm hoping some are waiting to be converted to dog lovers eventually.
Yeah. Again, how to explain to anyone? I don't even want to try. But I only hope that this book, because it's interesting and everybody's got their different, perspectives and points of view. Even people who have no interest in animals will probably just read it for the read first, and then maybe be curious about what is this fascination that dogs seem to have with so many different people from different sort of backgrounds and setups and family dynamics, etc.
Yeah.
I've got so many favorite stories about how dogs bring love. I used to see a girl once long ago. That sounds horrible, but yeah, many years ago there was this young girl, and her grandmother really didn't like dogs. And I all my life, I would take the dog with me wherever I could. That was the law. So dropping, picking, those kind of things. Dogs always in the car with me. Going to get an ice cream or even going to a place like Crossword. I'd sit out with the dog. So I remember going to a house once, and for some reason yeah, I had to pee, or there was some reason I had to go up. I didn't want to leave him in the car. So I said, can I just bring him up for a little, just 5 minutes, and then I'll go, leave immediately. And because of this whole grandmother thing, we, wouldn't take him up normally. So she said, okay. I went to her bedroom to use the loo. And of course, my dog at that time, Luciano, he just wandered off on his own, German Shepherd. And then I came out and she said, where's Luchi? And I said, I don't know. I went to pee. So she said, but please don't tell me he's gone to my Nani's room. And I said, I have no idea. So you know how these things work out. And in the end, it's like Murphy's Law. And yes, there were like 3, 4 doors, and he's gone straight into this one. And she was chatting with the dog. He had gone straight up to her, this woman who hated dogs. She was
Yeah.
fascinated with him. He was just sitting there looking at her, mouth to mouth almost. And she just found him wonderfully handsome and interesting, majestic. And just, they just connected. And then,
Yeah.
Hemali, she kept asking the girl to bring when's Cyrus coming over? And will he bring Luchi? It just went from just like from black to white, it just went completely, or just connection, just alone. Nobody said a word. The dog went into the room on his own, and they became friends. It was like a
Yeah.
miracle.
And I think that's one of the things. I think people who don't connect with dogs is because they don't have the experience of meeting, a dog or spending time with a dog. I think they just don't understand dogs. So there's this alien presence. You just think of the things that could go wrong, but you haven't really given yourself or the dog a chance. And I've seen that so many times that, once you get this dog and you make the connection with dogs, there's no going back. That's it. But you have to then have that right environment and be introduced to a dog to be able to form that connection. I mean, well, barring the RWA uncles who go around saying ban dogs and don't feed dogs and whatever, I think most people actually, when they say they don't like dogs, don't really know what they're talking about because they probably haven't had that exposure to a dog.
Yeah, it's
I mean, how can you not like dogs? Yeah, if you know dogs, how can you not like them? I think it's like,
it's a
yeah,
bit like the whole. I hate to say Hindu-Muslim issue sometimes. People just live apart and have no idea, and just say, I don't like them, I don't like their way, and all that
yeah,
because of no exposure. A little bit
yeah.
of interactivity, and after some time, you realize there's not that much difference, and sometimes the food is better. If you give a chance to another community. Uh, but yeah, so coming back to the whole thing, now let's just talk about you. Others, I'll go on ranting about my all my problems with people who don't like animals. So so you started liking dogs almost as an adult, but then you became a immediate convert as well. Uh, when did you have this idea that let's get people? I mean, it's a great idea when you think about it. The moment you told me, I was like, wow, what a great idea. Get people to write little anecdotes about dogs from their perspective and point of view from across a whole cross section of people.
So I think One of the things is that when I was growing up, I was reading a lot of books around dogs. So whether it was Snoopy or it was, all the characters that we grew up
Snoopy
with.
was standing on 2 feet
Yeah.
sometimes. That's a
This
bit
is
hard to explain. Yeah.
or Snowy and
Uh,
Tintin. So
Snowy.
there were
Yeah.
all those, or Scooby Doo. There were all these dogs, these adorable dogs that you have in
Mm.
literature. But growing up, clearly I was probably reading the wrong books. But I didn't read that many books around dogs. And the books that I read with dogs, except for maybe books like Marley and Me, which is one of my favorite reads. But the books I read around dogs, the dogs were very much a sort of a side presence. And I thought that it would be actually nice for us to make dogs center stage of this book. I mean, so the humans in this book, as you'll see, are very much the loving but supporting cast. It's the dogs. It's 45 stories which center around the dogs who've made a huge difference in our lives. And when I reached out, so my first list of reaching out to people were, because I come from books, writers I knew who were dog parents. And you were in that very first list when I reached out and said, listen, I mean, do you just want to write about anything to do with a dog in your life which has made this impact on you? And then, as it happens, the universe grew. People started suggesting other people. One of the other things I did want to include was stories from animal rescuers or people who are in rescue, because I think that's also a very important part of this dog universe. And then the community just grew. Yeah, I mean, people started suggesting other people. Then someone said, hey, why don't you ask this person? He's got an interesting dog story. It came to a point where the editor I was working with was getting slightly worried, because every week I'd say, listen, I think this is a nice story to put in. And what's also interesting is the different forms that the stories took. So while there were essays, there were photo essays. There's one dog, Aruna Vasina's dog, who's done haikus. So it's a very interesting, vibrant universe, and it's unpredictable in the sense that pretty much how every day with a dog is. There are surprises every day, and that's really how it happened. I think what was really heartening was also how everyone, you included, immediately jumped at the idea, um, because I think people don't really talk about their dogs or write about their dogs so much, but they really want to. I mean, these are stories they want to exchange.
Himali,
So,
you have no idea. I know in publishing, but they call us to write about things which, like, can you write about Independence Day? Can you write about Parsi New Year? Can you write about today's, something color day? I mean, they're ridiculous things. You want to just pretend to be interested. So I'm so
yeah,
happy to write about something that is always on my mind. Because
yeah,
I got to tell you that if the dogs weren't around, my family wouldn't talk to each other. We have two at the moment, both rescue. One Saluki was abandoned by a breeder, left in Alibag,
mm,
and one
mm,
Desi dog of Mugdol Hound descent, who was found, the female left alone to die in a market in Chondi.
yeah,
So yeah, so my wife has now gotten to this whole thing about we have to only rescue dogs. So although
yeah,
I've always had GSDs, unfortunately or fortunately, no racism implied, but this is where we stand. So if anybody has a GSD that needs a home, and we can quietly leave them where my wife will think the GSD is coming in, and wow, and then we're stuck. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But I think
it's
one of the
go
interesting
on.
things. Good you say that, because one of the interesting things about and important things about this companionship with dogs is the stories around breeders, is the stories around when people
Horrible.
get dogs. Yeah, they don't really realize what goes behind. And I didn't. My first dog was actually not, I mean, he wasn't a rescue dog. Simba wasn't a rescue dog, and I didn't really know what went behind that. So I think part of this whole storytelling around dogs was also, and that's why you also have stories of animal rescuers, is I think you also need to know the reality of what it is and what you're doing when you go and want to just buy that cute dog in the window or get that breeder dog. I mean, there's a lot of pain and heartbreak and that
Also,
goes with
coming back
that.
to the breeders, the thing that we found out is many of them are just not into animals. It's a pure business
Yeah, yeah,
thing. So,
yeah,
it's like a vet who doesn't like animals. He's done it because they failed the other
yeah.
medical course. And, I mean, those people should be
It's a
in my list of
commercial
capital
business,
punishment.
right?
It's just,
Unfortunately, it's all
yeah.
commerce. Yeah,
It's all commerce. So how do you? There's no empathy and there's no question of talking to them about anything.
yeah,
You expect that the dog breeder is a person like you who's now breeding dogs. Hence, you're talking to yourself, but it's not like that at all. And
yeah.
it's horrible, the cruelty and all that. I don't even want to think about it because I still get really enraged and unfortunately can't do anything except pound my desk like a mad monkey, to use a phrase. All the monkeys are lovely too. little more dangerous. Um, so let's get back to the collection first. Let's talk a little bit about the book, and then we'll talk a little bit more about personal insights and all. So tell us about a few of the writers, the ones you know,
Yeah.
and what they've written about.
So it's got a collection of 45 contributors, and initially it was a lot of the people who had contributed were writers, because that's the universe I know, and that's the people that I reached out to. So right, but what's interesting, like I said, apart from the names, is the different kinds of writing. So there are essays, there are photo essays, there are haikus. One of my favorite stories, well, actually, who am I kidding, they're all my favorite. But one of the stories that I really like is this story from my friend Sean Morton, who lives in the UK. And she talks
Yeah,
about this thing that a lot of people don't know about, which is breed specific legislation, which is when you actually have four breeds which are banned. And
yeah,
if the council finds out, the dogs are taken away and put to death. And I thought that was absurd. I thought this was like completely dystopian when I first heard of it. But I think, I mean, what's also interesting about this collection is, apart from the stories which touch you in a personal way, there's also information about, about rescues, about breeding, about dog racing. One of the pieces is about dog racing, which again is immensely cruel, but it exists. So I think it's important for people to also get a sense of what really happens. But most of the stories in the book are actually very, very personal essays about dogs which have touched people. So whether it's Shobha De and her Gongli, or it's Gulzar Saab and his Pali. He's done a really lovely poem where he says he and his boxer Pali had this great connection, this very, very, very special connection. And he had another friend called Pali, Pratipal Pali. And this friend comes home. And so Gulzar Saab is sitting there wondering, now, how do I say Pali? What if both of them respond?
yeah,
And what if the dog takes offense? So I
yeah,
mean, there are a lot of fun stories here. There are stories by Ruskin Bond. Your four dog commandments, like I said, are really fun, really irreverent, but I think also hold a profound truth. I mean, those are really good commandments, and I like how you said dog's attention span is lower, so it won't be 10, it'll be 4. And then there are stories from people like Menika Gandhi, stories from Atul Sareen. So it's a very wide universe. There are photo essays by Sunita Purwala of Dogs on Marine Drive. There's a photo essay by Divya Dugar, who, according to me, leads the ideal life. She travels with 3 dogs and a baby in train compartments around the country. So that's a lovely photo essay. So it's a lot. It's a lot of different kinds of stories, but at the center of all or most of these stories are those dogs, those very special dogs.
it begs a question also. I think, Himali, if you think about it, all civilizations, not just ours, have dogs in the culture in a sense. You just look back thousands of years, etc. We brought them in; they became very social with us, etc., etc. And Indian scriptures and all are filled with, there's enough examples of all that. But somewhere in urbanized India, and more urbanized India than rural India, I think rural India still love their animals. You can see that with some of the rural people who come and work here, who look after the dogs better.
Yeah.
Something happened in the last 200 years. I don't know, Victorian England, or what happened exactly, where we sort of got disassociated. Lots of people have been just disassociated from dogs, and I see that it's like DNA is now programmed to be fearful, and the normal curiosity, which say some of us have, some of us don't have, and that has to be reprogrammed. From the childhood. See the
Yeah.
kids. While some kids are so curious and want to run to the dogs like we did, there are those who are fearful because of first impressions from their parents or whatever's in the DNA, and I think that
Yeah.
whole thing has to be reprogrammed. So shall
I
we destroy the population and start again?
Yeah. That's a very good idea, Cyrus. Let's do it. Let's do it. And
Yeah,
let's make dogs the commanders of a lot of these things. Let
yeah.
them create the rules. I think it'll be a better world.
That's also now that we mentioned, that's another terrible thing that we have to neuter all the time in our effort to stop the population. Or I feel really terrible doing it, but we do it because we don't want all the other options that are out there. I want to quickly bring up something you mentioned, which is I think you were talking about pit bulls and these Cane Corsos and the big breeds who have got a bad name, but honestly speaking, it's the fact that they have potential to be ferocious and powerful, no doubt, but they're also very loving and affectionate, and if brought up properly, can be absolutely the same dogs. So
Yeah.
can't why did the worldwide legislation against these dogs ever look at the fact that it's the human factor which is more paramount and more important? You
No,
know,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think every dog has the potential to be loving or the potential to be okay. So I'm one of those who's not very, I won't say I'm very objective because I think it's never the dog's fault. That's one. It's never the dog who's to blame. It's either the circumstance or the upbringing or the stereotyping that we do. So we have so many
no, but
people who tell us,
this is not an emotional comment. This is a very logical comment, if you ask
"This
me,
is what
because you're
I
making the
agree."
dog live in your society with your rules. So
Yeah,
how is it the dog's fault anyway? Oh, it's never the animal's fault
it's
because you're wanting them
never
to
the
follow.
animal.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also dogs are not malicious. Dogs are not out to bite you just for the pleasure. I mean,
yeah.
that's only humans, right? I mean, it's only humans who have this sort of agenda. Dogs are they will respond to their circumstance and how they
And I've
develop.
never heard of a dog who'll have a drink with you in the evening, then fire you the next morning. The things
Yeah,
that we can do in terms of
yeah.
cruelty with co-workers and colleagues and all is on another level altogether. Dogs are pretty black and white if they don't get along.
They really are. And I mean, going back to your point, one of our dogs is a Rottweiler. And you should see people's responses around him. And he is the
Racism.
silliest dog ever. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is
It
really
is.
dog.
It is that version only. Yeah.
And he's the silliest, sweetest dog around. I mean, he's afraid of everything. I don't know why, but that's just, I mean, he's just a bit
How
skittish.
sweet.
But
A
he's
scary Rottweiler. How
adorable.
cute is
Yeah,
that?
called Custard.
Yeah.
So
Custard.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's break the stereotypes here. Let's not give him this macho or whatever name, let's call him Custard. It's also named after one of the same friend, Sean's heart dog was called Custard. And I said, when we get a Rottweiler, we're going to call him Custard. And so Custard is a sweet, adorable dog, but you should see the reactions of people around. So I think there's a lot of inherent biases, which unfortunately have no basis. So yeah, I think, I mean, I just wish people would give dogs a chance and just give them that loving environment and give them, I mean, even if it's not a loving environment, at least don't expect them to be this fierce, mean machine because they really are not.
A friend of mine, going to the Rottweiler point, a friend of mine has he found abandoned pit bull who had been badly beaten in the forehead, was cut badly with a sharp instrument, etc. This dog is so loving, Himali. You have no idea. I mean, he licks your face dry.
Yeah.
Perfect stranger. He loves everyone. He's so loving, and I can't think why anyone would have inflicted such pain on him. Because he's not even like a bad tempered sort of dog who's had whatever got a few issues with people or whatever. Nothing like that.
No,
And
no,
Pitbull,
so
muscular,
yeah,
big looking, and all that, but
yeah,
he's like custard. He's
yeah,
the PR king. He likes
yeah,
everyone, and he wants to
exactly,
go to everybody and lick them
exactly.
without
No, no,
without holding back.
I get it. And unfortunately, pit bulls are also used in dog fighting, right? So that, I mean, it just the kind of cruelty we inflict on dogs is sometimes it's staggering. It's a very dark place to go down, but it does exist, and if you don't talk about it, then it continues to exist. But yeah, I mean, I think the stereotyping just has to stop.
A quick word on Maneka Gandhi for a second. I'm a huge fan. A lot of people say it's all politics and this and that, but I've seen steadfastly she's stood up from whatever position she's been as an MLA or above, or when she was in the cabinet. She's always like put a foot forward, and which I think is another problem we sort of face, that legislators and people in the know have to make stronger laws for animal cruelty. Like
Yeah,
here in Mumbai, apparently it's 50 bucks bail where you
yeah.
beat a dog or hurt a dog badly and somebody files I mean, 50 bucks and they're out. It's ridiculous. I
I
mean,
mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. But actually, Cyrus, I think it actually starts with the idea of purchasing a dog. I mean, there are no licenses. There are surely if you're going and getting a dog in your home, like if you see the animal welfares, for instance, when they rehome a dog, they do home checks and everything. But
correct.
otherwise, anyone
Lots
can
of
go buy a dog.
diligence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's diligence there, but there isn't diligence in someone wanting to go and pick up a dog from a breeder and getting the dog home. And then they realize, okay, this is a living thing, it's going to grow, it's going to need food, it's going to need affection. And so, I mean, slowly you see their attitude change, which is really sad. But I think, I mean, yes, you're absolutely right, there have to be stricter laws. And I think there also has to be awareness. A lot of times people are not aware that there are things like, people say dog ko lift mein mat lao. Now
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that. They say you can't discriminate.
First,
Lots.
and let me add to that point here quickly so that nobody sends us messages. Also, when they say menials, I hate the word servants. It should be outlawed. Vendors, etc., should not use the lift. I find that preposterous.
It
It's
is
really
the
how can you segregate lifts?
it is
Everyone
the
uses a lift or
costume.
nobody uses a lift. I don't get that. How can you do that?
Yeah, but that is exactly what we do, right? We compartmentalize as humans. We compartmentalize based on what we think, who we think deserves what. And I think that's like really ridiculous. But there it is. So, yes, I mean, coming back to Menika Gandhi, her piece, I don't know if you've read it yet. It's one of the most heart-rending pieces because here you have this impression of someone who's like, very sort of, I won't say shrill, but very loud, very out there talking about animal welfare. But you have to understand that behind that is the story of someone who really very deeply cares about animals. And each animal, each dog, makes that difference to her. So I think it was very important to get that voice in to say, look, I mean, this is why I do what I do. So, I mean, yeah.
Himali, you're a friend, so can you do me a favor? Please tell her that if she wants to start her own political party, where obviously the manifesto will be all about animals, etc., I will bring people. I will scout the country. I'll do Padyatra after Padyatra. I'll actually work for the first time in my life, and I will help bring her to power. And we will have a leader who puts animals first. Oh, that'll be so much fun.
That
Imagine if
would
we
be
can have new
amazing. Huh?
laws and we can just catch people. Oh God, there'll be retribution. It'll be like, after I'll just pick
Yeah,
people up just
yeah.
for naming your Pomeranian, those terrible names. No more dogs will be called Tommy, Moti, Raju, Biscuit. All those names have to go. Uh, I'll allow
Yeah.
Simba. I saw Simba in your biodata and a few others. Yeah,
Thank
Simba's like the human name Aryan.
yeah.
Back in the 90s, late 90s onwards, it just became such a big name. Everybody started calling their kid Aryan.
Yeah, I
There was just too
know.
many of them.
I know. It was Rahul and then it became Aryan and then Simba.
Correct.
Simba ke pehle, I think it was Caesar. I remember all these.
Caesar. Yeah, the first German Shepherd that came to my
Yeah.
house when I was 5 was a Caesar. You're
See, there,
right.
yeah.
These are smaller laws. First, we get the really evil people are doing evil things. These small laws also have to be looked at some point. Boss, name the dog correctly. Be very careful. I don't know why that
Yeah.
happens. Everybody wants to do a Simba. Everybody wants to do a Caesar, a Tommy. I mean, it's always the same.
Yeah. No, it is true. So there's this really funny story about this friend of mine who works in Friendicos, Tandrali, who's also one of the contributors. And Friendicos is this welfare organization in Delhi. And so they rescued this dog, and the guard at that time did not know whether it's a male or a female. So the dog was called Mukesh, and it was a female. And
Hmm.
poor that poor dog, through her life, went around being called Mukesh because no one knew whether it was like a male or a female.
But how
And
hard was that to find out?
but I don't know. I,
This
I
man
didn't
is
get into I didn't get
this
into
man
the
is no
specifics.
exactly this man, and he's obviously no man of science. All he had to do is put the doggy upside down. I mean, it takes 1 second. Yeah.
So there you
Uh,
have. There you go. You have Mukesh. But yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Tommy, and there are some other names which have been doing the rounds, and they really should be retired now.
No, and my pet peeve, which I write about and do my stand up a lot of times also, this Arpit has mentioned it immediately. Zeus, the dog I
Eh?
mentioned, we thought was GS, and this is a real story, because for months we were going to Oval this back in the day, and everybody with a very friendly Labrador, we'd all say GS, 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 because that's what the guy would call him, because there's no way on earth he was educated in Greek history and mythology and all that. And so, when the lady finally turns up, the great owner finally decides to descend on us and take her dog out herself. And she's most perturbed because we're all shouting, kids are going, yes, yes, kids are noisy and everybody's Labrador being such a friendly dog, very popular. And then she just almost lost it. What are you calling my dog? She's a very haughty, westernized sort of lady. And I was like, GS, because that's his name. No, that's not his name. It's Zeus. I said, poor Raju is walking the dog. I mean, he did his best to communicate the name as from Zeus, it became GS, and it's there. And it's
So
just one of
there's
my
a
favorite
really
stories.
Yeah, so there's a very funny story of Shobha De and her Gongli, and Gongli is of
Yeah,
course named after this Chinese actress, and I mean,
yeah.
they were all very very happy that they have this Gongli in the house. Mr. Day is a big fan of the actress,
Hmm.
and suddenly they turn around one day, and all the when they go down, they say, "अच्छा, आप तो उस घर से आए ना जहाँ पे गांगुली है." So Gongli is known as Ganguly in that entire building. So there we are.
So this is the problem because we don't live separately in islands of just six people who understand your subculture, etc. We have to find some commonality in names. So hence we have understood why Biscuit, Tommy, Muti, Raju, etc. Even Simba is acceptable because everybody can say the name. All said and done, and then the
I
communication is
think
easy.
Just give
My
the dog a lot of love, and the name doesn't matter at the end of
my father would give names of his favorite tenors from Western classical music. So we've had
it. Wow.
Luciano, we've had Rufo, is even earlier than that. We've had Volpi, and these are lesser known tenors from way
Wow.
back when. Yeah. So, but luckily they were easy to pronounce. So, not too hard, not too, we could have gone for some really ridiculous names and suffered, but no, that didn't happen. My dad
Well,
also wanted to name.
in my defense, most of our dogs are rescue dogs and came with their own names, so we didn't want to
Okay.
change that.
Yeah.
Except Custard, of course, was a very deliberate naming of a very sweet Rottweiler.
Yeah, but I'm just
And
worried about custard because I'm hard of hearing now as I age. And I was thinking, if you say custard from far, supposing you're watching the dog, and so you just pick up the name, it may sound like the abusive word, which rhymes with that. I'm just thinking, that'll cause confusion.
I never thought of that. Thank you for introducing that thought now. I'll be very,
No,
very.
listen, be careful when you're out with people because there are also, I like a whole group of people who I call the semi dog lovers. They're really curious, but they're not confident enough. But you can see that. So I always encourage that because you can see them looking. Then I always go and say, "Ha, haath lagao, wo kuch nahi karega," that kind of, that initiate that kind of dialogue. And then it goes further from there because that curiosity is always positive. It's never negative. So,
Yeah.
that's one of the things we can do to spread the gospel of dog. But want to thank you as you go into break, Hemali, for your contribution. I think it's a superb book. One of the few moments I'm proud of in my life. This and the time when I didn't hit the lady on the sixth floor with my car while reversing because she was 81 years old at that time. If you're 75, I would have run over twice because she takes so long to cross. But I was nice. But this is superb. This is my people who follow the podcast know this is my pet thing. Literally, no pun intended. And I can just go berserk. I only get violent over animals. I never ever get physically violent. Otherwise, I'm a complete coward. I'm the first guy to run. Somebody attacks my wife. I'm like, Aisha, all the best, love you, and I'm gone. It's like that. But you do anything to a dog or a cat or anything like that, and I don't. I just become like a titan. It's the only time when I get some sort of character and strength.
I think one of the things you don't mention, Cyrus, and this is something I heard about from our friend Abod Aras and from a few other people, is how much you also support animal welfare. I mean, I didn't know that you do so much for welfare for stray dogs, and I think it's really commendable. I think one of the other things that's very commendable about this book is that I wanted all royalties to go to animal welfare and charities, and everyone, without batting an eyelid, said yes. And we're talking about some really serious writers, some artists, and everyone said yes. Animal welfare, go for it. We'd love to do that. So I think it's remarkable. I think dogs do bring out that side of us. There is that. Yeah,
Himali Abod, they use our office as well.
yeah,
He's on another level. I can't, people listening, you have to understand. Abod is from a normal middle class Mumbai environment, a gold medalist, MBA student, all that corporate sort of background and everything, and would have by now been the head of an MNC. He's
yeah,
that kind of person. To
yeah.
turn your back on the material world and then just help stray dogs at the beginning of your career. I mean, that kind of, I wish I had that spiritual strength.
No,
I
it's true.
really envy him because I don't.
It's true.
I still have to, buy things and survive, etc., etc. So this is always the
Mhm.
second thing we do. But to do that, I mean, this is like a Mahatma sort of figure.
No, it's
So
true, and
although
that's one
he
of the
dresses
things.
really badly,
I'm hoping we can bleep that part out.
no,
But
no, he's fine.
but
No.
he does. I mean, one of the things I mentioned in the introduction is exactly what you say, that to be an animal rescuer, and it's not just about the fact that you're always worried about where your next grant is coming from, how you're going to feed, how you're going to take care, but also the fact that you see so much cruelty and you carry on. I mean, I'm not sure that I would have that strength,
and
or
and negativity because they try to get money, and it's always imagine you can't get money for
yeah,
humans, for orphanages, for all these things. So down in that whole hierarchy is
yeah,
animals, and down is the dog with all
yeah,
the cultural mysticisms that are put over it. So they have to sit there with a begging bowl and be last in the
yeah,
list.
yeah,
So
yeah.
please, anybody watching who's rich and likes animals, just put aside some money for animals and for dogs especially, and a little
No,
bit give Himali.
thank you
What
for
the hell
saying.
is? I believe in commissions. You must take a bit. We are Indians. Jugaad karna padega. Without that, we will not survive. Yeah, 10% goes straight to you. You just say for your pet dog. We'll call it that. By the way,
No,
taxes have been paid. It's April 1st, and so that's done. So please don't bring up finances. We have to take a quick break. Himali stays with us. Silvery will join us, and anybody's got questions for the next half an hour after that, that's your time to ask us. Dog lovers only may apply after this break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to Tanisha, Shweta, and Ashish. They are the founders of the sex toys and wellness business, the Sangya Project. They recount their journey from an Instagram page to a full-fledged queer-owned business. On The Fighting Goat, Arjun and Somesh take a look at why MMA fighters are choosing to go back to pro wrestling. Want to learn an interesting perspective on the act of letting go? On The Habit Coach, Ashton shares 3 questions that will help you forgive others. On Marathi Kitkitun, the Deshmukhs draw a connection between the disciplines of science and literature. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshav explores the city of Strawberry Farms, San Diego. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. Also, remember, we're on YouTube. You can check us out on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube and get a list of all the YouTube channels we have active at this point. I'd also like to make a quick note that we're doing a small listener survey, and it would really help us if you could fill that out. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance and India Water Portal. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Back here, Silvery joins us, also known as Antariksh.
Good morning.
Uh,
Hello, sir.
He's an animal person. He's a cat person more than a dog person, but an animal person.
No. I would say I like both.
But you're looking after
a lot.
cats at the
You don't
moment.
have a
Yeah,
choice
because there
on
are more cats in my building. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't want to piss off our guest. What is this? But no. I just have more cats in the building who I end up feeding. But I love dogs as well. It's
But Himali, just quickly before we get into other things, I forgot to tell you there was one name which I loved, which is Prerna Bindra's Doginder. You know,
Yes.
because I with my Punjabi friends I do this a lot naturally. You know, I just change their names with the Indar at the back, like
Yes.
Siminder. You know, I just add it. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And I thought I saw that name and I was like, wow, Prerna should get the Padma Shri. This is great. Finally, a name India can be proud of, and they can say it. Everyone can say it. You see, North, South, East, West. You go and say, Doctor, I'm Doginder. How tough is that? No more GS. I mean, no more struggle for the guy. Can you imagine? It becomes like a humiliation for him to bring out that name which he can't say, and he knows he's going to screw it up. So when I think back, it was really cruel in many ways. Doginder, that's the name for India, and Prerna
Doginder
should get a
was-
medal for that.
And Doginder was the love of her life. It's a very lovely piece, actually. It's the last
It is.
conversation with Doginder. Yeah.
It is. So again, let me just advertise the Book of Dog, Himali's contribution, putting together dog lovers, dog parents. Oh, where's the damn camera? And Prerna Bindra's, the one we're talking about, is on her dog Doginder. Please read it. Some of these things are so beautiful because people are being so open. And again, if you have that empathy factor, it's like reading poetry because you really, really get it. And if you don't, just give it a try. Give it a try. Maybe you'll just understand this world is more interesting than you think. Sometimes I think, people just don't see the little beauty that we have. Tell me honestly, guys, what is the most beautiful thing in the world? I was thinking about this on my drive here to talk to Himali. I was thinking, would it be like a Brian Lara cover drive or Ursula Andress coming out of the water and Dr. No, or, a Beatles lyric that, stays in my head forever. And they're all beautiful things. But I don't think anything compares to a puppy. I just love a bouncing puppy, bounding around curiously. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing.
It is
Oh,
a
man.
delight. It is the most beautiful thing. You're right. And the other really beautiful thing is, so when a rescue dog starts to trust you, and we've had some dogs who've come with quite a lot of, as you
Issues.
have, issues. And then when that change happens, it is just such a profound moment. I think
It's amazing because
Yeah.
Peter, our dog, exactly what you said. This is exactly what happened. He had been beaten, and also he was so, especially of males. He was okay
Yeah.
with females, sexism, but male humans he didn't like at all. Took a
Yeah.
long time. He's still scared of males, especially working class males for some reason. Is all whatever the issues are, they're imprinted in his head. So that is still there. And I'm just thinking, but with my wife, it's the opposite. Completely. We've been married 22 years, and she doesn't trust me at all. I mean, for some reason. I don't know why I said that. Unnecessarily spoiled our moment of poignant poignancy. Okay, Sylvie, over to you.
Talking about dog names, I remember as a child I had a friend in school whose father had a very good sense of humor. I remember we used to hang out with his father and all. Like after school, we used to go to his house and his father used to crack a lot of jokes. So he had a dog and a cat. And I think now this thing has become very common, but at the time I hadn't heard of this. The cat's name was Dog and the dog's name was Cat. And I used to find that very funny all the time. Just as like I don't know, it was just
That's
very
pretty
funny.
clever. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
Because that'll bring
Yeah.
a smile to anybody's face, when you hear
Yeah.
it for the first time. Yeah.
It-
As long
it's
as the dog-
memorable.
Yeah, I don't know. The dog and cat are complaining about the whole species thing. I
They're
mean, out
not.
here, they,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's just you call the cat and the dog always comes. That was always like very funny to me. Yeah.
That's
We
very
had
cute.
where I live, we have this Nas cafe. Now it's gone. Immortalized in 80s Hindi films, you'd have seen it. Like Amar Akbar Anthony song sequences are there because it looks over the Queen's Necklace, which is Marine Drive. So I used to take my German Shepherd there because he was an Irani Parsi guy who owned it. Would let me take the dog up. So it's great fun to take the dog up,
Oh.
and yeah. And then again, so I think Mumbai was going in the right direction because there were certain people like that. We had one of these beer bars which allowed that recently. His name I've forgotten. One of these new age beer bars to take your
Yeah.
pets along. But if you go to Czech Republic and places like that, everywhere the dogs allowed on the
Yeah, yeah,
subway, in the
yeah,
restaurants, cafes. You don't have to worry. Everywhere.
yeah. No, that's true. Delhi, there are some places now which are allowing that, but I think we need to have far more inclusivity in where we can take. I mean, for a dog parent, dogs are family members, right? So I find it ridiculous that most of the places you can't take your dogs. It's crazy.
And I find it ridiculous they don't invite the dogs. Somebody called me for a 50th birthday party recently, and I sent a message saying, "But you've not invited my dogs." I was like, come on. I mean, you should at least. It's disrespectful.
It is very
It's
disrespectful.
And Hemali, what on the other side? When they come home and they say, "Can you hold your dog or put your dog in the room?" Like I'm like, would you say put your grandmother in the room? It's the same thing. I won't put my grandmother in the room because I mean, what do you mean? That's
I
ridiculous.
Yeah, I find that actually, I mean, see, coming from a space where I was, so there's a difference in being afraid of dogs and not liking dogs. And I say
Yeah,
this
that's
because,
true.
when I
That's
was
true.
growing up, I was afraid.
Yeah,
So I would be a bit more sort of
sensitive to. Yeah,
sensitive to
I
that.
agree.
But I'm not going to go and lock my dog. I will
Yeah.
still do this thing of maybe which is slightly inconsiderate, but I will still try and say, listen, I mean, why don't you try? Dog won't say anything. Give it a chance. But if someone is afraid, then you sort of respect that. But if someone doesn't like dogs, they shouldn't be in a house in the first place.
So we
Yeah.
have some vendors right now doing the kitchen and all the whole buildings being done. And so these new guys came in the other day, and one of them asked me, "वो dog काटेगा?" So I said, "पता नहीं," because but that's the right answer. I don't think I should commit. How do I 100% know he won't? So after that, this guy is just standing there perplexed with fear. But I'm eating something and carrying on, and but I couldn't
You
stop
were just
myself.
doing it to amuse yourself, basically.
Yeah, because I'm sick of answering these questions. Like, if the dog was really dangerous, would we be allowing the dog to just run around? And I mean, if he was like a man-eating tiger, I mean, just a small little dog. Firstly, and the other thing I tell people is, "Aapka vajan kya hai?" Immediately, because you are 200-pound man telling me doggy ko pakad. I'm saying, my Mary's 25 pounds. You're 200 pounds. Where's the fight? As an MMA artist, if you were fighting this dog, you'd be so happy because you're 8 times superior in weight. But
Yeah,
it's
but
a
they don't get it. I
they don't
think,
get it. Yeah. And as for humor, as a failed stand-up comic, I can tell you they never get your funny turn of phrase or anything like that. That's a waste of time completely. Yeah. But the good thing is my
Uh,
family have all become militant now, thanks to me. So my daughter is fighting with people. My wife fights with people over the dogs. I'm saying,
yeah, yeah,
over
yeah.
people who are me. Have you seen these guys who are paid money to walk the dogs and they just they're on the phone and the dog is being choked completely? It's happened so often. They're just not paying attention. They're just
yeah.
mindlessly doing their job. I don't know who to blame for that. You can see the small dog is trying to do potty and he's being pulled at the same time. It's
You
On
know,
the
terrible.
other
some,
hand, though,
yeah, sorry.
so on the other hand, though, it's always very interesting to see like a good dog trainer training dogs. Like I've seen this. I remember back in the day at PDP at Priyadarshini Park, there used to be a lot of dog trainers, and they would like
Hmm.
do it so well, and the dogs were like always excited to play around and catch the frisbee and catch the ball, and it was very cool.
That's
Although I have
true.
one,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I think it's about so with trainers, yes, but I'm one of those very suspicious types who still wants to be around to make sure that there's no
Don't
cruelty
hit. Yeah,
involved.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
Right up now they're being more careful, but up to say 10 years ago there was definitely hitting involved.
there
When my
was.
dad took our German Shepherd for training and all that, after 3-4 days, because they kept saying don't come,
Huh.
so don't, which is you understand the point of don't come because he's distracted by the owner. But after some time I was like, come on man, well, don't come means what? What the hell? How do you know what you're doing with the dog? It's
Yeah, no,
ridiculous.
no. I
Yeah,
tend to get very nervous. So we haven't.
yeah,
Yeah. So trainers, we've sort of always referenced and cross-checked and made sure that the trainer is the one who doesn't use force. Um,
yeah.
mm,
I
Also,
absolutely.
it's very easy for them to train certain breeds like GSDs and Labradors and all that because they're receptive, very receptive. Let
yeah.
them try with Beagles and some other breeds, and then give us the same results because that's
We
very
had
easy.
yeah.
Yeah,
We had two boxers. Oh my god, they were untrainable,
impossible
adorable.
boxers. They just
But
run around, non-stop. There's nothing you can do. The trainer goes mad. The trainer
yeah,
trains himself at the end. He becomes a Shaolin
yeah.
monk, and
So
it's gone
exactly.
forever.
So the boxers train the trainer very well.
Of
But
course, 100%.
but those two were like probably the most fun, delightful dogs we've had. So they were brothers,
Hmm.
Jack Sparrow.
What energy!
Yeah.
Nice.
Amazing energy. And Jack Sparrow was called that because he had this one eye patch. Okay. He was a
Hmm.
white dog with one eye patch. And his brother Carl. And they were crazy. So no trainer worked. And I think after a point we all gave up and said, Chalo chodo. It's okay. Enough trainers have been trained by them. Let's just go with the flow.
And my other criticism, now that you brought this up, both you guys, is that
Yep.
the owner just wants to, because of the economic status of the owner, I suppose, or whatever, they just want to disassociate themselves with the responsibility of anything. So even the training, they want somebody else to do it and bring the dog perfectly back, which is no bonding.
Yeah.
Try to tell people
That's
during the
true.
pandemic, this is your best chance. Take the dogs off the leash, try and walk with them. There are no cars,
Yeah.
etc. Just see that whether the bonding is, and it's not that difficult. With most dogs, it's not that difficult. All you have, because ultimately they want to be part of your pack and next to you. There's no dog who's going to run away for long.
But I
But
think
nobody,
yeah.
no, but
Sorry,
then
go
they
on.
resort to dog walkers in no time, and then they can't do that bonding properly, and then they don't know why is my dog pulling, and I mean, it's too late then. After 3-4 years.
I think it's also a question of, so sometimes I question why people get dogs. Why are you getting a
Hmm.
dog if you don't have a personal connection? The dog is screaming
Correct.
from the balcony all the time. You think the dog is sort of a hindrance. I mean, I just don't get it. But I think there is a question about people who get dogs. I mean, I think we do have to address the fact that getting dogs is a responsibility. It's not just all, oh, I'm getting this dog and this is it and it's all joy. It's tremendous joy, but you also have to assume that role of responsibility and taking care of the dog for as long as the dog is with you. I think that's very important. And I think it's also very important to, and I see this and it's increasing, unfortunately, Cyrus. I don't know if you see that as well. There are these conflicts in societies where people are like, don't
Ah,
stop dogs, don't do this.
oh
And,
yeah.
they are the dog lovers and they are the dog haters. And I feel like those divides are the
But no,
problem.
but in Maharashtra, the law is very clear that you're allowed to feed the dogs. The dogs that have to be fed in there. You cannot stop a dog feeder
Yeah.
from feeding the dog.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
to be fair, I think people who feed also have the responsibility of designating areas and also that
It's just a question of hygiene, designating areas, and just cleaning up after you're done. It's not that difficult.
yeah.
Fair enough. But the militancy of the other side is the problem. This
No, it's
acting like it's
illegal.
terrorism. A person is feeding a dog, a milk of human kindness, empathy
Yeah,
factor.
yeah,
What are you looking at? You're looking at some terrible human being. It's not a
yeah,
terrible human being. I'll show you
yeah,
terrible human beings. People who
yeah.
drive slowly, they're terrible human beings coming up the one way. Terrible human beings.
No,
The city is filled with terrible human beings. Delhi also. So don't
it's so
look at these guys.
the saddest
I
thing I
mean,
heard recently was someone said, "ये dog हटा दीजिए, ये stray dog है, ये कोई breed dog नहीं है,
ah,
हमारे apartment में it's like not looking good." And I was just,
hmm.
like you, I just wanted to go and just slap someone, and I was like, how do you even think that? That's kind of beyond a conversation. I don't think that you can change mindsets. I just think people have to be more aware of the responsibilities and the rights.
Himali, let's accept we Indians are the most racist people in the world, so much so that after humans, we are racist amongst the animals also. And
This
that
is
that is so difficult to accept, elsewhere in most societies. It's
yeah,
just ridiculous.
yeah.
But yeah,
No,
I always stand up for the dog feeders. Many of them are very meek and all that. And I keep telling people now, you just stand up. We have in India, if you don't bully back, you just get bullied. The people in India don't seem to understand any other way. You
no,
try to
and
be
they have to,
democratic, there's no democracy or egalitarianism. Nobody understands. You have to
and,
shout at them back.
and there are
Yeah.
rights. I mean, no one should actually be logically stopping you from feeding a dog. Okay, I understand that,
Absolutely.
An act of kindness.
yeah, yeah,
It's an
yeah.
act of kindness and they're angry. It's just ridiculous.
But if you don't get that, then, like I said, I don't know what conversation can happen,
No,
but
but
I find that.
but Himali, it could end well if people approached it differently. Supposing A is feeding the dog, B comes up and says, "Great, what you're doing, but can you just make sure it's clean here? Maybe I can help you." If they took that approach, the person would
Exactly.
start feeling a little guilty about that part of it, which is irritating them. Or let's keep the dogs in one area so people are not inconvenienced. Which is all these things are possible. The attitude of the animal hater is very like, I'm on a moral high ground. How
Yeah,
dare you? And
yeah.
then firstly, you and me and Silvery, our blood boils, but the poor dog feeder person is now like a victim, like they're running away from the situation
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they're
So
looking like they're criminals.
yeah, so there's one contribution by Jai Arjun Singh, who actually gets a lot of he feeds a lot of dogs, he helps a lot of dogs, and he talks about this, and it's just, I mean, like you and me, he gets really infuriated, but I think at the end of the day, you have to try and make the others see sense, because what's also happened is, I don't know if you've seen these cases where people actually go around poisoning stray dogs. I mean, I'm just like, what universe are you living in? I mean, how do you think it's okay to go around poisoning stray dogs just because you don't like, or you think that there might be a perceived threat? So I think in general, we have to create a lot more awareness of both what people can do and the fact that there is a certain responsibility attached with feeding stray dogs.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're
Like
for years.
there have been to that point, there have been cases of people poisoning stray cats in my building also. So it's like a thing,
Yeah.
dude, that
Yeah.
people do. I don't know
get it.
what makes them do this. This is so
And
ridiculous.
they don't bat an eyelid. There's no moral conscience,
Yeah.
nothing. They really think they're doing something
Yeah.
good. It's just
And very
scary.
often they don't do it themselves. They get like a third person to do it. They'll tell the watchman, "Acha, ye."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
No, I get it.
But Sylvia, I think as you said that your watchman, the building people are trying to freeze your Wi-Fi for some reason.
Oh,
Be very
Yes.
careful.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
the animal haters are everywhere.
You're
Yeah,
being
but
watched.
I thought of a good name. I thought of a good name for a restaurant for dogs, or a place where you can take your dogs. Wine dining, like WHINE. Like,
Very good.
nice,
Nice.
very
Yeah.
Very
good.
good.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah.
thinking.
Now-
We'll tell you when we accept the
Yeah,
the right one. You're on the right
When you
track.
visit.
But no GS. If I hear GS again, I'll be very angry. Yeah. No, so
Hemali, how long did it take you to write this book, if I can ask? Like, how long did it take to
collect it, you
ask
mean?
everyone to
Collect
collect
it.
all the? Yeah.
So,
Depends on the writers not giving it on time. Don't start.
Uh,
it
Yeah,
off.
that's what I'm saying. You know, like must have been like the
I'm not looking here,
logistics wise.
but yeah. So it took about a year. I think so. Like I said, I had the idea for a while, but I started I started putting it together and reaching out to people when the first lockdown happened, which was March 2020. And like these are our markers in life now: first lockdown, second lockdown. But anyway, and it got published in January 2022. So the process has taken almost 2 years. But that also because it's 45 people, it's 45 different contributors. So yeah,
Yeah,
2 years.
of course.
Yeah, quick
So
word
it-
on the pandemic also, because in the pandemic we had both good and bad stories. The good stories, of course, being more people getting interested in pets. They had time to give to their pets, etc. But the bad stories of abandoning them every time there was panic, a dog is spreading or cat is spreading COVID. Sylvie and I have covered it on the podcast so many times. About 3 or 4 times we had these shock. Even in the news media stories came out, electronic media stories came out, and people just abandoned their dogs in parks and places like that. Just left their dogs and cats.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Overnight.
think that was the other sad part was that a lot of people, because they were going through this whole phase of loneliness, went and adopted dogs and
Mhm.
cats, presumably. And when this thing started getting slightly back to normal, they were just going back and saying, "Acha, humne liya tha. Now we want to give up the dogs because we are going back to
Yeah,
our
that's
whatever,
terrible.
normal work
Yeah.
life." And I thought that's what I meant. I mean, how ridiculous is that? You just get in a dog because you think you want companionship for a short period, which is great to have companionship, but then it's a commitment for life. Yeah, it's not, you just don't go and pick up a dog because you think that you want you want some sort of company for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. That also happened in the pandemic.
Yeah, I have to thank my father, because the way we were brought up with the dogs, we don't like other people touching them, walking them, feeding them. We only want the family members to do that. And we used to coordinate the entire day. Now he's not very well, but the whole day is coordinated about who's walking the dog at what time. Will you do my shift? Will I do? And the 4 of us were helping. Now I'm basically alone and my daughter, but so it gets a little tougher. But honestly, that's a lovely part. That everybody comes together because of the dog, and it bonds the family. Because
Yeah.
everybody's most worried, and other people can't understand. That's all you guys talk about. Who's feeding the damn dog? But there's nobody in the house, so somebody has to go there and feed.
Yeah.
And then a dog person, a parent will understand immediately. A non-dog parent will be like, "These guys are nuts," but that's fine. To
Yeah.
each their own.
So
Yeah.
whenever I have to travel, for instance, I have to first make sure that everything in terms of the arrangements of who's taking care of the dogs, that's the most important thing, is taken care of. And then, for dog
Is your
parents,
hubby as crazy about dogs?
so I actually started appreciating dogs because I was married into a dog-loving family. Before that,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So he's equally crazy about dogs.
a good Indian male, finally.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Finally, loves dogs. Yes.
As a breeder of Indian men, I must say I'm proud. This is a great moment. Silvery, shall we go to the AMAs?
Let's go to the AMAs. Yes. All right, AMAs. Vikalp has a question. He says, "What are your views on hate given to people who buy breed dogs? Why do people make them so guilty? They are also giving good life to a dog."
Yeah,
What do you guys think?
let Hemali go first.
So actually, this is a good question, because you see a lot of this polarization over breed dogs, non-breed dogs, and I think the question has two parts. One is that it is very difficult to find homes for indie dogs. That is a fact, and I think a lot is being done around that in terms of adopt, don't shop, and But personally, if you ask me, I would tend to agree. I mean, there is a lot of hate given to people who have breed dogs, but I think all our rescue dogs are dogs who've come from a bad past and are breed dogs. And to me, I'm not making that distinction. Exactly like he's saying, I think you're giving a dog. I mean, it feels a bit sort of presumptuous to say you're giving a dog a good life. You're also getting a good life in return. But I think, yeah, as long as you're actually taking care of a dog who is in need, I won't make that distinction. I would say that these are two separate issues. Yes, indies need to be adopted, but any dog who needs help should be given help.
Absolutely. This is like again racism, no question about it. When you look at Black Lives Matter, let me the philosopher give philosophize a little bit. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that white people are evil. You don't have to
Yeah,
correlate it like that. You have to
yeah,
look at
exactly.
how this section is not doing so well and let's help. And not about how that section is bad because this section is not doing well. I think that's the wrong thinking. So the
That's right.
Great Dane is not the responsibility, is not responsible for the dog in your lane who's been abandoned. It's people
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
understand that.
Exactly,
There is no
exactly.
correlation. They're all just lovely animals.
And
I
poor
don't have
breed dogs don't know they're breed dogs,
yeah,
right? I
I
mean,
know they don't know that they don't have this racism. They're just
yeah,
happy to, be a five-star kutta, as we call our dogs.
yeah,
Really. I tell my
interesting.
dogs every day, you get treated better than anybody I know. Human. My dad used to tell stories of his friends coming and saying, Ki, Agle life mein, we want to come back as your kutta. And nobody said this as a comedy. They said this as boss, I want a good life. Can we be reborn as a dog in your household? Because
Nice.
we'll just put our feet up and scratch. That's basically life.
The
Um,
highest
Great.
compliment.
yeah, but I'm saying it from our side, but exactly what Himali said. My God, if you don't know the love and affection of a dog, the camaraderie, the connection, I do believe we are emotionally stronger than other human beings because deep down, we just can't get broken as long as we have our dogs. We
Yeah,
somehow,
it's true.
we'll always be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
And that, Silvery, now
Girish
you,
Patil. Yes. Sure,
go
sure.
ahead.
Girish Patil has a question. This is actually a fun one. He says, Cyrus, if Silvery makes a joke
He's a
about
vet,
your
huh?
dog, yeah, he is. So he has that also. He said, Cyrus, if Silvery makes a joke about your dog, would you slap him and yell, "Keep my dog's name out your effing mouth"?
See, that's actually in all that humor. That's an actually fabulous question because that is one of my sore points. People always ask me, "Would you are you always like do you ever lose your temper?" And I told Himali this. I've told everybody this. I do have a problem with animal issues and all that. I just go. My impulse goes fast really quickly there, and it doesn't elsewhere normally, except for driving maybe. I'll tell you, John Abraham story. I was on a flight with him coming back. He's also half Parsi, a Liverpool fan, all that. We both love bodybuilding, so we were chatting. So I said, he was massive. He was benching 400 plus pounds and all that. So I said, John, what if you hit somebody? I mean, you're really big. You really hurt somebody. And he said, no, I don't hit people. So I just asked him jokingly. So when's the last time you hit somebody? So he said, seriously? So I said, yeah. So he said, about 2 years ago, my mom on Juhu Beach feeds dogs every morning. And some guys came and threw stones at the dogs and insulted her. And he was jogging somewhere in the vicinity. He said he went absolutely berserk. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
that story. And I never once said, Bob, be careful, you're a film star. People Insta pe aayega, tera career jayega, uske baad nuksan ho jayega, cancel culture chalu hai. Nothing. I was like, you're my hero now. I love you. What a great
oh,
story.
I'm now a big
Yeah.
John Abraham fan. Thank you
Oh
for
yes,
sharing that.
he's a genuine dog lover, absolutely genuine dog lover, no question about that. And his mother
Wonderful.
is testament to that, feeding the dogs from way before he was famous. I mean, that's the way they're raised. Also, some of us are lucky that way that our parents were like that. But
Yeah.
having said that, what a lovely story. And he told me the same thing. I'm a pacifist. I would never raise my hand, nothing. But I just can't stop myself. When it comes to in defense of animals.
Yeah.
As Mahatma Gandhi, who's not been featured on the show enough, once said, society is judged by the way they treat the animals. And, I think that's highly another really profound point.
Yeah, it is true.
Absolutely. Girish Patil has another question. He says, one of my favorite human dog love stories is the Nawab of Junagadh. When fleeing to Pakistan, took his dogs with him and left his wives. What would you do, Cyrus, in a similar situation?
Just respect, brother. Just respect. What can you say? I mean, not to put any wives down. I mean, but that's a really tough one for me. I've heard stories of the fire and a guy going back to save his German Shepherd. Things like that, going into the fire and coming back with 40% burns, but save the animal and all that. So it's not one way. They will do anything for us. I mean, that's almost without
Yeah.
it. They won't even blink. But we it brings something heroic in us sometimes, which we're not capable of. But the dog
Yeah.
can do that. At least I know that I'm a very fallible human being, but I know that there's something that happens because of the bond with animals, which makes me stronger. Hemali, would you agree on that?
Absolutely. I think they bring out a side that you probably didn't know you had.
Yeah.
And yeah, that happens. That
Also a
happens.
sense of, I don't know, righteousness or justice, or what is it exactly, where you don't there's, I suppose people have this about religion and they want to go and fight wars about it and all that. But for us, I think it's the one time when we feel, okay, I'm drawing the line in the sand, this is something I'm going to fight for. This
Yeah.
is something which
Yeah.
and on some levels, I think it's quite hip, if I dare say, because I find all the other things to be really unhip. Going and fighting for religion and country and caste and community. I mean, what idiot does that? You fight
This
for
is
animals, they don't fight at all.
this is the one fight I would take on. Yes.
That's what, fair enough. Silvery, will you die for your
Yes.
cats? Well, at
Yeah,
least for
sure.
the yellow
Hopefully
one
not.
with the
I don't
white
have to.
stripes.
Yeah.
How bad
Okay.
is Powai? Yeah.
Yeah, there are leopards and not tigers,
Yeah.
but leopards do come in. Yeah,
Yeah.
that does happen. Hemisha Manola De Silva also mentions that then there are stories of students from Ukraine who did all they could to bring their dogs
Yeah.
back to India, which is also it was very touching for
Yeah,
that.
we've seen many of these stories of asking for help because the Indian embassy said no initially to getting the dog out. Like, again, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
where do
it's
we
kind of
start?
inhuman too.
Because
But
their
You
point
know,
is that we're trying to get
so many
20
things.
people
Yeah,
in, and you
yeah,
will come 16 people and 4 dogs, and all that. It's a tough one, but for me, it's a no-brainer. I mean,
yeah.
I would never ask a
exactly.
person to leave their dog.
Exactly. I
I
mean,
mean,
I may be
For me,
naive, but I mean, when you don't leave aside any other family member, why would you think of leaving your dog? So
also
I
the
think,
dog is fully in your charge. It's an
yeah,
unconditional bond, and you're in charge. How can you abandon that? You're literally abandoning the post. I mean, people again think we're being facetious when we say things like, like a child, or is a child, or is a family. But for the dog fraternity, there's no question.
no,
We don't.
absolutely.
I've had so many people say, the dog, this and that. I said, no, no, listen, this is the pack. There's my mother, my father, me, my wife, and my 2 kids and my 2 dogs, and it's a pack. There's no hierarchy here.
Yeah,
Everybody is part of that pack, and we got to look after the pack. And
yeah.
that's all there is to it. We never want to question, oh, should I save more food for mom or for Mary? Mary, but because mom is aged now, should not eat so much. But yeah.
All right. Tarun Kaushik asks, as Hemali is primarily into publishing and Cyrus is in the entertainment industry, what is your opinion on getting our pets to work?
I think everyone should get their pets to work, but
See, there's
It actually
a
is a
point
good
here.
morale booster
If
for
it,
the rest of the office
yes,
also, because everyone was playing
yes.
with the
So we had a
dog.
wonderful leader in MTV called Sunil Lulla. I think he was one of the best man managers I've ever met in my life. And he was the one where MTV really climbed and all that. There were many reasons for that. But his man management, with different people from the peons to the VJs to the marketing, sales, double MBA types, was very good. And second superb thing that he did is one day I had to shoot on Sunday, and I started crying about it. And I said, "There's one with the dog." He said, "Bring the dog." And after that,
Wow.
all the weekends, I brought my dog to the studio, and we'd you do our thing,
but I
And
think it is true that dogs actually reduce your stress level.
everybody loved it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The whole studio came alive. They're taking balls and playing with him and blah blah blah. And
you change the energy.
yeah,
So, absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
not such a bad idea as people think.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right,
Hemali,
we
I just
take
thought
one
of a
more.
question. Hemali, if you were to write a second book, are there any contributors you have in mind who you'd like to ask to contribute to the book?
Putin,
Yeah.
if you can distract Putin to write about dogs and horses, his two favorites. Yeah.
Sure,
This is
sure.
true. I mean, that's such a contradiction there itself, right? But I don't know, Anshul. I haven't really thought about it because this book took up so much of time and mind space.
Of course.
But of course, I think the point is that for people like Cyrus and me who love dogs and dog stories, there will always be more dog stories you want to hear. Like he said, the John Abraham story is such a lovely one. I think when I see what Mr. Ratan
It's a lovely
Tata,
one where Indian men get beaten up by big film star from rich background. But
that's
yeah.
extraordinarily lovely. But yeah, I think there are lots of dog stories that are still to be told. So sure, I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. All right.
Like I said, I mean, I'm the kind of person who, when I'm talking to people, I'll be talking so much about my dogs and I'll take out the photos and you'll see their eyes
Yeah,
glaze.
yeah. What they do
So,
with their kids.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So,
But then see, if you have a fellow dog parent, we're really happy to see the picture. But
oh,
now I
yeah,
know exactly what you're saying. can't stand seeing other people's kids when they take out especially babies, which are like sort of shapeless and all that. And this is young Ishan. I'm like, what? This looks like Ishan. This is not a baby with a fat face,
Look
But
at
then somebody,
yeah.
yeah, Custard is totally different. He's got a Rottweiler with big jowls, and immediately you'll, God, we are racist in our own way. It's a reverse, but it's still there. Yeah. Okay, last question. My accountant has
Okay.
come all the way from Matunga
Okay,
to tell
okay.
me I have no money. So quickly.
Okay, absolute last. Harvespa Kasad has asked, hello all. For someone who is absolutely afraid of dogs, how do I get over it? I mean, I'm really scared about entering a house having a dog as a pet. So what do I do?
Himali, I can, because I've done this a lot. I have a very simple theory especially with kids. Once I had my first child, etc., and we always have dogs. I tell the other parents, don't send them to the dog. Let them just stand around. That's all they have to do.
Yeah.
Stand around and don't pay any attention. Especially with German Shepherds, we're not going to go and bother them or anything because they're only interested in me or my son or whatever. So it's even easier because that dog will not even come to you. So then the child starts getting that, the energy is safer and all that. And slowly, the child's curiosity will overcome the fear. Then you don't do anything. Just let them be around.
Yeah.
This is what I said. Sorry?
Sorry. No, I said the other thing also is you have to respect each other's space. Give the dog also time to come, discover, understand you. Stay still. Don't force the interaction is what I would say. Give yourself time, give the dog time, and I think you'll see something develop there. I think a lot of times people make mistakes in trying to really rush this, and then the dog gets excited, and the person gets, don't do that.
It takes 25 years for a marriage to be somewhat semi-successful, and you expect to, the dog and you to be friends in 4 seconds. Although it happens as well, love on first sight.
If you're not afraid, then take it slow, but give it space.
Harvespa is a Parsi Manas, so I'll tell him whenever he comes to Mumbai, if he comes to the Oval Maidan with me, I'll introduce him to dogs where it's a question of being around. It's a step-by-step process, and we'll cure him of the fear.
Yeah.
But about wives and family members and all, I'm not the right person to help him. I'm telling him right now. He'll only help with the dogs. Chalo. Himali, sorry I have to rush, but really godsend meeting you. This book is fantastic. I hope everybody reads it. I hope you do more stuff. I'm sure you will. And we get to hear from you again.
Thank you so much. This was one of the most wonderful chats I've had. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.